And welcome to another edition of Conversations with the Elite. It is a show that seeks to rejig your thinking so that, of course, you can make better choices and in turn improve the quality of your life. And tonight we have another edition about the status of higher education in our country. Of course, we understand the status of higher education in Kenya is one of the largest in Africa with 70 institutions, 33 public, 37 private. And of course, this has been driven by the higher need of higher education among Kenyans in our country at this particular point in time. And to help me discuss this and to understand this so that at the end of the day you can make better choices, I'm joined by Dr. Halima Abdullahi, the Acting Vice Chancellor of Umma University. Karibu sana Daktari, and thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you very much. Nashukuru.
Karibu. So Daktari, if somebody were to ask you tonight about the status of higher education in Kenya, what would you tell them?
Maybe I just speak from where you've started. You said we have about 70 higher institutions, 33 public and 37 private. I think for me, from where I'm sitting is because this is being driven by the low demand of low skills profile.
Okay.
That is actually declining, but the demand for high skill profiles is actually increasing. Issues around cognitive skills, social behavioral skills, combination of skills. And also in Kenya, you know, we are one among the largest economy with regard to digital economies.
Okay.
So that is pushing the drive for higher education because the kind of skills the younger generation is looking for to fit into the current and the future is actually in terms of technology and digital, and that is actually contributing to the demand of having higher institutions of learning. And you can even see the trend. There's also a lot of investment from the private sector.
Okay.
It's surpassing the public sector. That shows you that the demand and the need for higher education is actually a necessity in this country. Yeah.
But Daktari, you know, when you open the market for the influx of any institutions in any industry, it comes with its fair share of challenges, because we know and we understand in the Kenyan setup, there are very many unscrupulous people who might want to take advantage of the shortage to come up with substandard institutions. So why is Umma University different, and why should people trust in what Umma University is offering?
Okay. Maybe before I come to Umma, issues around substandard institutions. We already have a number of institutions and regulatory bodies. For example, the Commission of University Education, which ensures that a university has to adhere to certain processes and procedures and meet certain standards before you are chartered to actually offer university education. And for every academic program that a university is offering, it has to be accredited. So it goes through the regulatory body, and for now in Kenya, the most critical is the Commission of University Education. And with that, there's also continuous audit by these regulatory bodies to ensure that we are actually adhering and meeting the standards. So that's why I'm a bit reluctant to say that scrupulous people will get into they might try, but I don't think they'll go far with it. And with respect to Umma, we've traveled a long journey for Umma. Umma started as a TICA, Technical Institute, where we're offering certificates and diplomas in the early 90s. And the growth has been, you know, tremendous. With the increase of students, you know, looking for demand and looking for high skills professionals, that pushed us to actually now think about establishing a fully fledged university. And we started that process in the 90s. Yeah, people are hearing about Umma now, but the process started a long time ago. So by the year 2016, we had already received the letter of interim to actually take us through the process of accreditation.
Okay.
And in 2019, we got full accreditation to become a chartered university. We are the first Islamic faith-based university in Kenya.
Okay.
Yeah. So that has been our journey so far.
Before we come to Umma and what they really offer, Daktari, the increase in these institutions directly, of course, will translate to a higher number of graduates each and every year. This comes on the bedrock that Kenya has fewer industries compared to the number of graduates that come out of these institutions. So in your view, where do all these graduates go to? Okay.
Let me just take you back, Kazungo. The thing is, we are actually a developing country. We are actually middle economy. We're no longer, the low-income economy in terms of our economical status. Okay. The thing about Kenya now, we are actually pushing towards not just employment as per se, but creation of employment. There are a lot of demand. If aligned with the Vision 2030 and also even the midterm plans, and even the Big Four agenda for the current government. There's demand around manufacturing, there's demand around food processing, there are issues around addressing issues around resilience and adaptability to climate change, so, and a number of issues that are coming up. I think for me, it is never enough. I think where the challenge has been is, are we preparing our students for what is out there? Are we preparing for our students to be able to address the issues that actually Kenyans are facing? Currently, we have parts of the country that is going through food insecurity and drought. Our students prepare to address and come with solutions to address that. So I think for me, if I look back and make reference to the education plan, the 5-year plan of 2018-2022, the plan was to ensure that the knowledge we're impacting on the students in the university and any other institution of higher learning translate to what is in the labor demand or the market demand. So are the two people communicating? Are the two sectors communicating? Issues around what problems are we addressing and what curriculum are we developing? Are they aligned? Yes.
And then, Dr. Ari, when you talk about the quality of education that comes out of institutions of higher learning, and at some point in time, the graduates in our country have come under a lot of backlash, because there are those who say, we as a country, we still import basic stuffs like the toothpicks, the hairpins, and what have you. Why don't we see our graduates, our engineers? The other time we were having a conversation about the COVID vaccine and how it was developed by universities not in Africa but in the Western countries. Why can't our graduates come up with inventions that of course are life-saving?
Okay, if I just pick the latest example of the COVID vaccine, if you look at these universities that have developed this vaccine, they have actually been funded. You know, vaccines are very expensive.
Yes.
For example, the Pfizer, who is behind Pfizer? It is not the government, it is not the university. It is the industry that is funding this university to actually produce this vaccine. So for me, I think Kazungu actually challenged the media, especially the Kenyan media, to visit all our universities and look at the innovations that our students are actually coming up with. For example, even during COVID, there were students from KU who came up with a ventilator. How far did that go? You know, so the challenge is who is investing in these local innovations. Okay. And if no one is investing in these local innovations, it will just, and that is something that also discouraging the students. I'll come up with an idea, but it will not go far. Most of these universities, including Umma University, we have an innovation lab, an incubation lab. Students are coming up with great ideas on a number of the problems we have, including issues about even parking in town. Right now, we are preparing our students to participate in the Pwani innovation that is coming up very soon, and also the Makueni Innovation Challenge. And if you go to these challenges, you'll be amazed at what the Kenyan students are actually producing, as well as their lecturers. So there's a lot that is coming, but is there investment? When we talk about industrialization, who is putting the money in this industry? Who's putting the money in these universities? Who is putting the money in the research institution? There's already a certain percentage that we have to actually put into the research. But are we getting that budget? So that is where the problem has been. For private university, it's a bit better, because private university, we manage our own budgets and we do our own resource mobilizing, like Umma University. So Umma University has a commitment. 30% of its budget has to go to research. And that's how now we can now start enhancing and ensuring that these startups actually get into reality. The other thing is just around patenting. When we get the ideas, who's running with these ideas to ensure that they are patented and they are protected? We're not talking about only toothpicks. The other day I saw, you know, these termites. Termites, we've all known it's food for, especially for people from Western Kenya. But the other day I saw in the supermarket termites packed nicely, but made in Taiwan. How is that possible? So those are the things. It's the investment. You have to put the money to ensure that actually the solutions come into the market. But the solutions, I can promise you, they are there. Yes.
And then, Dr. Ari, this now brings to the fore the issue about research.
Yeah.
And when I was coming into your facility, I quickly scanned through your mission and vision and realized that you are very big on research. I want you to tell me how far you are with this, and how has it been for you in the research component vis-a-vis the issues to do with funding?
Okay. So for the last couple of years, from 2016 until now, we've had allocation to the research, like special allocation in terms of our budgeting to the research. And our focus has been, we work on research to address the social issues that are affecting the communities. And because we are situated in Kajiado County, so we chose the first county that we can work with is Kajiado. So right now, Kajiado is suffering from one invasive species called Ipomea. And this particular species has been ravaging their grazing areas. So, and the local communities are struggling because it's taking up the vegetation where we should be grazing the animals, and it's not fit for consumption by the animals as well as the human beings. So we've been working with the county government to come up with solution, and I think the research will be completed very soon on how we can actually eradicate this Ipomea from this particular county. So for us, our research is driven towards addressing social problems, issues around climate change, issues around water. Water is fresh water in Kajiado County is also a challenge. How do we go about pushing and enhancing issues around water harvesting and pushing, at least when we get rains, because we don't get them very often. So when we get rains, then what do we do with that particular set of water? How do we explore? Now we're working with the engineers from the Ministry of Water here locally to address how do we explore the underground water and be able to actually supply water. So I think the focus for Umma University in terms of research is research to address the social issues that we have, and are focused mainly now in Kajiado County as we progress. Yeah. Considering that we are a young university as well.
Yes, I was coming to that, and the fact that Umma University is relatively young. And earlier on, you have alluded to the fact that you have an innovation lab. Tell me the thinking and the reasoning behind coming up with an innovation lab and what you intend to achieve through that program.
Okay, first of all, the idea of even establishing the innovation lab was also pushed by the students themselves.
Okay.
The students of computer science and technology were really like, they already started their own club in terms of incubation and innovation of ideas. Okay. However, because we are mainly a community-driven institution, how can we address the issues around our communities? The first assignment in terms of actually establishing this particular lab was to actually take students, not just Umma students, but primary and high school students in Kajiado towards a coding program. Because our understanding is when students are engaged towards issues around coding, I think it really works with their cognitive skills, improve their skills, and they're able to actually be at par with other students in Kenya as well as in the world. So our first task of this particular innovation lab is actually to adopt a number of schools. We've already identified 3 schools that already have their own computer lab, and we'll be taking these students, including our students, not only the computer science, even staff who are interested. I've already registered for that. I want to learn coding so that I can see maybe I still have room to get my brains, you know, getting more smarter and things like that. So that is our first assignment for this particular innovation lab. However, our students have been innovating even before the establishment of the lab. And in the next few weeks, we will be participating, as I indicated, in the Makueni Innovation Challenge, as well as the Pwani Innovations Challenge, or Innovations Week.
And Dr. Ripia, I've also learned that your institution offers a course known as Law and Sharia.
Yes, it's our newest baby.
Please tell us the reasoning behind that idea.
Yeah. So the reasoning behind that idea is because for the longest time, you can see in the you know, even in the financial sector, in the business sector, there's a demand for Sharia compliant products. Yeah, because also the Muslim population in Kenya is increasing, but even the non-Muslim, we have a lot of people who are interested in Sharia compliant products. So because of that particular gap, yes, we have people who are doing, we also, by the way, in addition to that, we're also offering Islamic financing so that it can actually supplement each other. Because of that and issues around the gap of people saying, I don't want to actually even have a personal lawyer because I don't subscribe to this kind of values, has actually brought that demand of, can we have law and Sharia where we have a combination of both, the conventional law and the Sharia law, and train students on that. And surprisingly, our first intake was actually September 2021. And most of our students had been admitted to other universities to do law. And they actually opted out and chose to come to Umma University to do law and Sharia. And because of that law and Sharia, they are going to have a competitive advantage over the other students who are just doing one part, either Sharia or law in wherever they are. So for us, I think that is a niche, and we think we will be able to address a lot of issues around Sharia compliant products and Sharia compliant services. Yes.
When you speak about Sharia compliance, Dr. You were saying that it's coming up quite well, and it's really important. But if I am a student who is watching at home, and I'm wondering if I have to do Sharia compliant courses, where will I find jobs then?
Oh my God, there are a lot of places you can actually find. I can give you a quick example. The financial sector, there are a lot of banks now, including even the conventional banks, that are actually offering Sharia compliant mortgages, Sharia compliant financing, Sharia compliant loans. And because for those who subscribe to these values, that is where now they will go to get the services they're looking for. But then who is going to guide these banks or the insurance firms or the industries on issues around Sharia compliant products? Yeah. Yes.
All right, at this particular point in time, we want All right, welcome back, and thank you so much for staying with Conversations with the Elite. Tonight, I'm privileged to be joined with Dr. Halima Abdullahi, the Acting Vice Chancellor of the Umma University right here in Kenya. Karibu sana, Daktari, and thank you for sticking with us.
Asante.
So, Daktari, this part of the show, I want you to speak to the young people, because very many, even if you've seen the conversations both on and offline, they don't feel like the stuff they learned in schools, you know, the mathematics, the cosines, the mole concepts, and everything they learned from primary all the way to high school, they feel like they don't help them directly, as it were. What would you speak to them if they're watching you tonight?
Oh, thank you so much, Kazungu. I think for me and for my dear viewers, especially the younger generation, I think what we learn in school is not, I'll give a quick example. What we learn in school is not 1 + 1 is equals to 2. What we learn in school is about improving or enhancing your cognitive skills, your social behavioral skills. How do you think? How do you adapt to situation? Are you teachable? Yeah. If you're taught a new skill by an employer, you know, just looking at your grades, they'll say, this person, even though they did mathematics and I want them to be, let's say, a producer in a TV station, this person can be actually, you know, is teachable. He can actually grasp idea quickly and things like that. So we go through school not to cram those things and come up and say, somebody will come and tell you, now use this cosine or tangent to do your assignment. But the cosine and the tangents were very important because it was building our cognitive skills. How do we think? How do we solve problems? And how do, when you encounter a problem, how do you actually address that issue? So that when we come into life, which is the reality, is now, if you are able, for example, the chemistry students used to talk about Schrodinger. I was a chemistry student. And just doing that Schrodinger formula until you complete that is about 3 or 4 pages, isn't it? And true. It was very difficult. Very true. But once you understood the concept behind it, it was very simple. But what was it? For me personally, it was teaching me to be patient, to endure, to think and not give up. And for me personally, it took me a long time to actually understand and be able to actually do that particular formula in terms of Schrodinger. So for me and for my dear children who are out there, I think going to school is very essential, and I still believe education is the key. How we use that key is where the problems differ. I think maybe we need to prepare our students better to the reality. And that's why even at Umma University we are pushing to actually teach using case studies. Okay. So even if you're taking somebody through cosine and tangent, can it be applied to a real situation? So teaching through case studies and say, yes, this is solving this problem. For example, when you had this case in court that was going on and you are seeing in the media, this is how this speaks to this particular. So aligning what we are learning in school with the reality we are going through will help our students actually prepare better and be confident with what they're being taught. It's across board. Even if you go to any other place in the world, even the biggest universities in the world, it's the same thing. You have to go through certain steps. That's what actually shows this person is teachable, or this person can actually grasp new ideas, or this person has an issue, how can you actually resolve that issue quickly before it gets older and it becomes difficult to actually correct it or treat it and things like that. Right. So it's that experience and learning and seeing your cognitive, your hearing skills, your communication skills. You see, that's why we're even having people saying, I've done English for 12 years, but I can't communicate. Because we are thinking it's just the way you write, and you know, you go in class and you do your assignment and you read the book, but it's actually supposed to improve your communication skills, even confidence. Where will you learn confidence if you're not confident in that subject you're going to speak about in school? Yeah. So yeah. All right.
I really like what Dr. you said here, that the things we learn in school we might not encounter the same theaters in life, but it's how we handle those situations and the pressures in school that will determine how we'll handle serious and life challenges as we move on. Thank you, Dr. for that clarification, because I feel like very many young people need to understand these things. But Dr. even as we speak about that, there is a curriculum change in our country. The Ministry of Education says it wants to phase out the 844 and come in line with the CBC curriculum. I would like your initial thoughts and views about that.
I'll pick it up from your previous question on what we are learning in school and what we're not seeing in life. Actually, that is now what the government is trying to do. Competence-based learning, or competence-based teaching, or competence-based curriculum. And if you see the little that we are seeing with the CBC students, whatever they are doing is actually what they do, what they experience, or what they go through in life every day. So for me, I am for competence-based learning. I wish I went through that system myself, through competence-based learning. But what I think now, I think the challenges that we are facing, even when there's a change, there's always, you know, kugwarana kidogo. Because there are people who are very difficult in terms of, you know, changing to a new thing. And change is something we can't actually avoid. For me, maybe continuous investment in terms of resources, in terms of capacity, in terms of equity across the different schools in the country, to ensure that every student is getting the same, you know, level of quality of education in terms of CBC. I think we'll be able to see a different generation after, you know, the first generation goes through the university or institution of higher learning. And even now, for students, for parents who have children who are doing CBC, their children are very inquisitive. Yeah, they just don't get one answer from you and they're okay. They'll always, you know, continue to probe and continue to ask you things that they're experiencing in the environment. And I think for me, continuous investment in terms of capacity development, considering that the teachers who are teaching now CBC didn't go through CBC. Exactly. So it will take us a bit of time. But I think we need to be patient, give it time, give it resources, and we will be seeing a different generation in the very near future.
All right, and speaking of the same, the first cohort of CBC students, I think, are in grade 5, if I'm not wrong. They are moving to grade 6, which is, of course, the junior secondary and then the higher secondary. That means in the next 4 or 5 years, they'll be coming to institutions of higher learning.
Yes.
How are all institutions in general supposed to prepare for them?
Yeah.
And in particular, at Umma University, how are you getting ready for this cohort of students who you say are very inquisitive and
Yes.
have really learned stuff hands-on, as it were? How are you preparing for them?
So it's actually now a requirement. As we go, you know, generally the lecturers or the teaching or the academic staff in the university go through continuous training every year in terms of mode of delivery, because things change. Even without the CBC, in 2020 we were caught up with COVID-19 and we needed to use a different modality in terms of teaching and learning. Okay. So there's continuous staff development in terms of the delivery and, you know, the kind of students we're expecting. So we're already ready in terms of the CBC, in terms of putting our, you know, a 5-year plan on how we are going to prepare our faculty and our facilities. It's not only the faculty, because remember, these are hands-on students. So the thing is, the way I was saying, investment in developing capacity development of this faculty, whether it is high school, because they're going to get also to high school and they're going to come to us. And when they come to us, it's a different ball game. So yes, so staff training, part of the staff performance, they need to start preparing for these students who are coming, aligning our curriculum. You know, curriculum is not cast on a stone. Curriculum has to be revised. Aligning our curriculum as we prepare for those students, aligning our academic programs. We even need to come up with new academic programs. By the time they're getting to university, then we are ready for them. All right, Dr.
And if you look at our country now, we are close to 60, if I'm not wrong, years after independence. And you know, when we started, way back, we were told that some of the biggest challenges that we were facing then had everything to do with education, because we had poverty, we had illiteracy as one of the challenges, and also disease. And close to 60 years later, we have made steps, yes, but we are really not where we would want to be. So I want you to speak on this from the perspective of an academic, and what really is wrong with our country? Why are we still seeing people going through these 3 big evils that were there in independence? 60 years later, we're still facing the same thing. So as an academic, what really is affecting our country?
Okay, first, let me maybe rephrase your concern. I think for me, from where I'm sitting, I think 6 years, depending on how you want to look at it, it's either a short time or a long time, depending on how you want to look at it. Because if somebody was born that particular day, that particular person is 60 years old. And if you look at, even at an individual level, how much has a 60-year-old achieved in that part? Then now you do the maths in terms of a country, isn't it? I believe we've made quite a number of strides in terms of education. If I pick up from, because I was born during President Moi's era, and picking up from that generation and looking back at where I've come from. And I think it is very important for us also as our younger generation and Kenyans in general to always look back where we've come from. If you look back where you've come from, either as an individual or as a family, you'll actually see there are a number of things that are happening that are very positive in your family. And most of these things can actually be attributed to education. I'll pick my family as an example. If we didn't get to school, I don't think we'll be where we are now. So for me, I think education, I still say education is the key to life. However, it's important for us to recognize that there's been a challenge in terms of equity. For example, when you just pick the education sector, are we having equities across the different parts of the country in terms of facilities for the schools, in terms of staff? So that is where I think now we have the biases or the variances as we speak. So students who went to a well-equipped school with everything, with the right teachers, with the right laboratories and everything, you can see their level of operation is somewhere else, and most of them have actually made it in life. Maybe a number of issues just have come along the way to derail them from their journey. However, students who have gone through a school that is not very equipped, half the time they don't have teachers, a few of them, they have traveled a difficult journey and they become successful, but a few of them have left behind. So I think what we need to push towards is that equity. That equity has to be enhanced. Where are we? Who is pushing us behind? Because at the end of the day, we are all a team. So the weakest link will always drag you behind, isn't it? So what are we doing with the weakest link in terms of education and in terms of even resource allocation? So how are we addressing that? Maybe the issues around devolution and increasing budgets for these particular marginalized areas has or will help this particular institution, depending on the kind of leaders they have in terms of, accountability and governing that particular resources. So that is, I think, what has dragged the country. Where we were already doing very well, you can see the level of development is on another level. It's not the same. So for me, I think the biggest evil here is that equity. So what do we do with the weakest link? How do we empower the weakest link so that we have now more literate people? Literacy doesn't mean you have to get employed, but it's important to be literate, isn't it? So that even when somebody is coming to con you, then we get even these phone calls of M-Pesa and mean, our people are getting conned. So literacy is something we need to push. Yes.
And Daktari, when you were talking off camera, you were telling me a little bit about your journey, and I don't want to spoil the party for you. You're actually one of the first female acting vice chancellors in a Kenyan institution. I don't know if I got that right. And please tell us about that and about your journey and how it has been for you.
Okay, I'm not the first female. I'm the first female in an Islamic or faith-based institution. So we have other female VCs in a number of public institutions and I think private institutions as well. Even the university that I was with is now being headed by a female VC. But for an Islamic faith-based, especially in this country, I am the first female acting vice chancellor. And the journey has been long. And I don't think we'll be able to finish this. Maybe another time we can speak about the journey. And that's why when you tell me about education is not the key or the country is not doing much, I always reflect into myself and just see where I've come from. And I think in the last number of years I've been in this world, including the 6 years we've been independent, I think there's something the government is doing that actually is empowering some of us who came from a very vulnerable population. My upbringing was very humble, but I had a father who was very dedicated about education. He was very clear. Sina shamba uta inherit, sina mali, you're not a trust fund child. The only thing I have for you is education. And because of that, I've traveled a very long journey. From primary to high school. I went to a diploma college first before I went to university. Yes, it has been long. I've done my degree, first degree in Kenya, my second and third degree in South Africa. I've worked in the research institution, and for the last years I was working with, 6 years I was working with the humanitarian organization at the Kenya Red Cross Society, and that's where I got in touch with the reality on the ground. And for me, I think there's so much education has done for me. If I look at the people, how they're struggling on the ground. And now, the last 4 months, I'm the acting vice chancellor of a fully fledged chartered university. And I think maybe if we get time again, I'll be happy to come back to Ibru and share my journey. And I hope my journey will empower a lot of people and encourage people in terms of how far you can go if you just persevere, be adaptive, resilient, and less complaining. Always look at where you've come from and people who are below you. Yes.
All right, actually, we need to actually create that time for that for that part of the show, because actually it's already inspiring me right here. Yeah. But I'm being told we have to really wind up the show. But I want to give you the last 5 minutes, and I want you to use your camera and address the nation. Inspire them. Take it away, Dr.
All right. So I will inspire from what Umma can offer, because I have my own personal journey, which we'll do it another day. So I think it's important for the viewers to know that Umma is the first chartered Islamic university in Kenya. It's a faith-based. So our values are actually, how we work with our students, how we impact knowledge, how we manage them is actually based on the Islamic values. And if you've seen where we are, it's a very serene environment. Right. It is young. There's room for growth. There's room for new ideas. There's room for changing the thoughts, because we can't say, we've been doing this for the last 30 years. What are you telling us now? So it's quite encouraging. And for most parents, especially parents who are insisting on good morals and values, this is the place for their students, because there we actually, everything is aligned with the values, and specifically values around integrity, around morality, around respect, around how you speak with people, how you live with other communities. And there's a lot of assumption out there that Umma University is only taking Muslim students. We have a big population of non-Muslim students, because we admit self-sponsored as well as the government-sponsored. And government-sponsored, they actually come through the COOPs. So you cannot start sieving and say, I'm not taking this one because it's Muslim, or I'm taking this one because it's non-Muslim, or things like that. So it's for all, but our values are actually the values of Islam, and that's what is our actually driving force. So we are situated along Namanga Nairobi Road. We have well-equipped library. We have very strong faculty members. We have ICT labs. We have accommodation. We have a number of extracurricular activities that we take students through. But we also have a lot of mentors who actually take us, especially very seasoned scholars, Islamic scholars who actually take us through, the life issues. How do we want to live in the righteous paths and things like that? And for me, I think for any parents, and especially now that parents are worried about the different vices we have in the country,
society, yeah.
It is a place that you'll feel safe for your children. Yes.
All right, Dr. I don't know if there's anything I can add. You've really not only given us very important insights, but also given us inspiration. And thank you very much for your time tonight. But I like what you said earlier, that education remains the key to life. Whatever you do with that key is up to you. I don't think I can add anything. My name is Kenneth Kazungu. Thank you very much for your time this evening. Good night, and God bless you.